Thanks for joining our monthly community webcast. I'm Jürgen Kress, part of the Digital Assistant and Oracle Integration product management team to support you as a partner. In case you missed one of our webcasts, on-demand recordings are available. For details, please see our monthly community newsletter. In today's presentation, Angelo Santagata will talk about cloud-native and serverless SaaS extensions based on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. Good afternoon, Angelo. Thanks for presenting.
Good afternoon there, Jürgen.
Please feel free to post your questions via the conference Q&A or Twitter #PaaSCommunity anytime. At the end of the webcast, we will answer them. Slides are available at the community workspace. Please do tweet and blog about products and services which are available today. Objective of the call is to introduce different options to extend SaaS services like ERP, HCM, or CX. These services can be connected with Oracle Integration Cloud. OIC provides out-of-the-box adapters. Traditionally, they can be extended with customer user interfaces like Visual Builder Cloud Service and custom workflows, part of Oracle Integration. New cloud computing paradigms like serverless and cloud native provide new technologies to extend SaaS. To connect and extend SaaS is a key differentiator for customers, and to connect and extend SaaS is a major service opportunity for you as a system integrator. So let's get started.
Oh, sorry, Jürgen. There it goes. We've got Safe Harbor and then the program.
I will start with a short community announcement in about 5 to 6 minutes, and then I will hand over to Angelo to give you all the details. We will wrap up with a call to action and answer your questions. Community webcasts like today are available for you as on demand. Usually we present it within 1 hour, a product overview, including a live demo. You can also download the presentation in PowerPoint format, and you can download the MP4 videos. For details, please see our community workspace or watch them at YouTube. We run those webcasts every month. Highlights from this year include ERP integration or HCM integration or NetSuite integration, also to connect and innovate SaaS, our kickoff webcast, or the new features of Oracle Integration Cloud. Please visit tinyurl.com/community-update. We also run webcasts for Digital Assistant, part of the developer community, like to innovate HCM with chatbots or Service Cloud with chatbots, or chatbot design and best practice workshop. I would like to say thanks to all speakers who presented in 2020 and looking forward to welcome you also next year. If you are a partner and you would like to try Oracle integration to connect SaaS, we offer a playground. It's a shared environment which is constantly available for you to try it, test it, to train and become certified. Please do not use it for customer projects and read our documentation. To access the workspace, visit tinyurl.com OIC test partner. To support you as a partner with proof of concepts, with demos, and technical questions, we created a Slack channel. The Slack channel, like all our services, are free of charge, and registration is open at tinyurl.com/askoic. With this short introduction, I would like to hand over to you, Angelo. Angelo, thanks for presenting and welcome to our webcast.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, everybody. I see we've got lots of people on the call. Good. Not everybody's nearly ready for Christmas, I hope. Just going to bring up the chat window so I can see questions. So if you do have questions as I'm presenting, by all means do post them onto the Q&A panel. Just looking for it. Where is it? There, Q&A. And I'll answer them as I go along. And the questions that we don't answer, I will answer them at the very end. I'm Italian, well, living in England, and audience participation is king right here, guys. This is a community. Ask questions. Any questions? Just ask away and let's talk about the subject that matter. So this subject here is I'm looking at extending SaaS with OCI. We did, you could almost call it OCI for SaaS, but there isn't a SKU for that. It's just we're looking at how we can use OCI, native OCI services, and extend SaaS using those. So let's crack on inside there. That's it. So a quick update about what the A-team is, if people may or may not know about them. We're going to talk go on very quickly to talk about why we're going to use OCI to extend SaaS. Then the bulk of the presentation is a collection of patterns and solutions that my organization, my team have collected, we've seen, we've proved out, and we're proving out. Some of them are still work in progress as well. And we're kind of like trying to break the boundaries and kick the tires and kind of work out what works and what doesn't work. Who is the A-Team? So a number of you guys probably already know the A-Team. I'm sure I've been to a number of Jürgen's events. I'm sure there's a number of people on here who know me, who have gone out drinking with me, and basically we've had good times. So part of the A-Team, and what do we do is we help customers. We basically do a variety of things, from evangelism, like what we're doing now. We're spreading the word about our experiences with the products, where it worked, where it didn't work. And that's really interesting to me, knowing where it didn't work. And we're a worldwide organization. So we're not, so whilst I'm based in the UK, my headcount is US headcount, is HQ headcount. I'm looking forward to going to Austin, Texas now that HQ's moved there. And a lot of our work is traditionally used to be troubleshooting, and more nowadays we're more gravitating towards the architecting and architecting for success, ensuring what we design or what partners and customers design works. Because if a solution, if a Fusion Apps instance works, the customer buys more of it. They buy more licenses, they buy more PaaS, they buy more infrastructure, they buy more OIC, and all of those things. So it's something that we need to do to ensure our customer success. Our specialization is, well, we have skills in infrastructure, PaaS, and SaaS, but our real specialization in our organization is we're not functional architects, where we have a number of people who are real deep and meaningful techies, but our real sweet spot is knowing how SaaS works and how we can get the best out of SaaS at the integration points. In the old days, we called this PaaS for SaaS. That is our absolute sweet spot in our organization. And some of the other things we also do is we actually work on internal engineering projects. So we work on future products and future integrations of our products. We have a blog, which is ateam@oracle.com, which is at the bottom there. And I post, and a lot of us post random, lots of blog articles on there on a regular basis. So that's who the A-Team are. So why extend SaaS? So I'm not sure how many of you guys are SaaS people, for a better word, but Oracle, we're promoting OCI. It's our platform, it's growing, it's really improved dramatically, it's very competitive now, and we're now promoting this to all our customers. We're ensuring all our customers know about OCI, use OCI, and that includes our SaaS customers, be it Fusion, ERP, HCM, or Eloqua, or Commerce Cloud. You know, SaaS is not just Oracle Fusion. SaaS is also these other, what I call the non-Fusion SaaS products. OCI provides services that range from Oracle managed, that you literally just deploy your code to, you just deploy your declarative code to. Oracle Integration Cloud is a classic, well, a very good example of that. Or there are stuff that's customer managed, right to the extreme of, here is a VM, do what you want with it, set up your routes, your load balancers, your security lists, whatever it may be. So SaaS customers, as a general, will prefer the managed infrastructure, the managed approach. They don't want to manage VMs, load balancers, and stuff like that. They want to deploy code, and it runs, and that runs at a determined cost. They want to know roughly what it's going to cost them, and that's always a bit tricky, but you can do it. So there are three kind of angles, and we'll cover those in a minute. That works. Another thing that's well worth knowing is that IDCS is federated with Fusion Apps, and so therefore all users that get onto Fusion Apps, any user that's onboarded in FA, automatically get their identity is federated across to IDCS. Maybe the word identity is the wrong word there. No, yeah. And therefore, it's easy for an OCI application, be it Java, Python, OIC, whatever it might be, to reuse that identity, the single sign-on or identity propagation. So you can easily go into Fusion, punch out to an OCI application. Still, the OCI application can know fully well who you are, and then maybe even then punch back into Fusion and execute a query in Fusion, a REST call, as the person that was in OCI. And that's all because we've got IDCS in OCI. It's federated. IDCS is federated with Fusion, and it's available within OCI as well, and it's also part of OCI as well. So the top three are kind of like the reasons why OCI makes sense for a lot of customers. And another reason, so the cloud native stuff, so the presentation originally was cloud native, extending SaaS with cloud native, is a lot of customers already have cloud native skills in-house. And a lot of customers already have a big deployment of cloud native skills, be it Kubernetes, be it Helm charts, be it Prometheus, Grafana, whatever it may be. So a lot of these customers may want to use cloud native technologies instead of, say, PaaS technologies or products like OIC, VB, etc. So there are some scenarios where we want to use OIC for this as well. They have already got extended skill. They've already got existing skills, or maybe they want to build an extension for a very short period of time. And OIC, one of the nice things of OIC, it does allow you to spin up and destroy solutions very quickly. And if you use technologies like Terraform, you can do it from a command line. The skill set's freely available in the market. And then the last point there is that SaaS and OCI can be, or at least closely located data centers. So we have a good advantage over, say, our competitors like Azure and Google, where your OCI layer, whatever you're building in OCI, is actually in the same data center, or at least closely migrated. So the last point is that Fusion SaaS, a lot of the new Fusion SaaS instances are actually being installed in OCI data centers. A SaaS customer wouldn't know that. Why? Because it's SaaS. They don't care. They just want it running. They want it running, they want it running. They want to make sure it's backed up. It's a SaaS solution. So some of the reasons are here why we want to extend SaaS, why we want to use OCI to extend SaaS. So the different sort of OCIs, the different sort of what is IDCS? IDCS is Identity Cloud Service. It is it's more than an LDAP server. It's an LDAP server and an OAuth server that Fusion applications can link out to. Internally, we still use IDM internally and OAM, but we federate out to IDCS, and that's what you guys can actually use. So thank you for that question, Kiyo. So different types of customer managed versus Oracle managed or mixed. So OCI, our OCI platform supports a vaster range of what you want to do. You can go full on, you do everything, which is the bare metal or the VM approach, where you manage the code, you manage your container, you manage the runtime, you manage the operating system. You don't manage the hardware, I suppose, on that one. So this is probably something you don't manage the hardware. We manage that for you, but it's, we're in that sort of area there. The next one is virtual machines, which is everything but the hardware. So I suppose bare metal is correct there. The cloud native one is containers. So in containers, you would manage your code. You'd manage the container running your code, maybe the language runtime if it's a Kubernetes container. So that's maybe in between. But you wouldn't manage the OS that it's running on. You don't manage Kubernetes itself. We manage that for you. So cloud native is all about running containers and being able to scale up and scale down, but you do have to manage your code and the container itself, and that container itself could have whatever it is inside it. The next level is things like functions, which is more serverless, where you just write the code. You write the code, whatever it might be, you push it to the server, which is in Oracle, and we run it. We manage the runtime engine underneath it. We manage the container. We manage the operating system. We manage the hardware. We manage everything. And that is a really nice approach for SaaS customers because it's just like SaaS, just deploy the code. Then we have products like, I put them under PaaS here, but things like OIC, ODA, VB, Visual Builder Studio, the whole lot there is basically, rather than writing code, it's declarative code. And I've split them up into separate here. It's exactly the same as serverless. You could really look at them as serverless type development environments where basically all you're doing is deploying your code and we run the runtime for it. Now, these are different runtime topologies and runtime execution models. They can all be mixed and matched. You don't have to choose one or the other. So I mentioned our Oracle Integration Cloud. This is the Integration Cloud, one of the Integration Cloud calls. It's our leading product. If a customer is looking for integration with Fusion SaaS or they want to do some orchestration, or they want to build UIs using VB, then Oracle Integration Cloud is the go-to product there. It does a lot for us. I mean, you guys on the call know probably more about it than I do. You deploy your integrations, you map my data, your transforms, your orchestration, and you hit the deploy button and it does it for you. It runs the code, it does the retries, it does the error management, you have dashboards, you have pre-built adapters, so you don't have to know too much about SaaS to get data out of SaaS. Although, to be a good PaaS for SaaS or extend SaaS with OCI, you need to know your SaaS product. You need to know what the data objects means. So, but the adapters really help you here and kind of make it a little bit more point-clicky and more declarative. All of this integration cloud sits on top of our OCI, and you guys know all this already, so that's all good. So that's all great, and I would definitely say if OIC's if you're pitching, the first thing you're looking at is OIC. But not every customer wants products like OIC, or maybe they don't want to do a declarative way, or maybe they want to do something in between. So the rest of the presentation is really saying OIC is the primary vehicle, sure, but for some customers it's not the right choice for them, and it could be because they don't have skills, and it could be because they want to have a single development methodology, and that's where we're going to dive into now, how we could use OIC and it also OCI. How we can use OCI to extend SaaS. A couple of questions on there. VB Studio is part of OIC, and the OIC subscription does include VBS and well, it's not Process Cloud, but yeah, we call it's Process inside OIC. So quickly recap on the definitions of cloud native. The important parts are, and I've already mentioned them, is it's a general approach to building and running applications that can take advantage of cloud computing. For me, and it's a little bit loose here, is it's containers, service meshes, microservices. It has to be observable, and it all has to be in the same management infrastructure. So you could spin up a Grafana, a Prometheus database and a Grafana charting and get data from everything underneath there. And that therefore means it's typically loosely coupled. And a lot of these cloud native systems are very loosely coupled, which also can make them resilient, manageable, etc. So this is cloud native. My favorite at the moment is serverless. Serverless is a kind of serverless is cloud native in that it's designed for and runs in the cloud, but it's more about the execution model. So with serverless, the big difference about serverless is that you deploy your code and you manage nothing. You don't start the service. At the very least, you might simply have to say, I want to create an instance of this, whatever it may be, API gateway, and then you run it, and then the service dynamically scales up and scales down to 0 the machine resources. This is one of the key points of serverless, is that you don't actually know what it's running in the background. It's there. You just use it. And if you don't use it, one of the other things of serverless is you don't pay for it. There is no pay for it. So products like Oracle Functions is serverless. Storage Cloud is serverless. If you don't have anything in the storage cloud, you don't pay for the storage cloud. We charge you by the megabyte, I think it is, on that. And you can charge on chunks there. And a lot of this is hidden. However, there are servers behind them. There are always servers behind there, but the point is that the vendor manages the server. I like serverless and totally managed systems because, again, SaaS customers, they don't want to manage it. And I'm lazy, and I don't want to manage it either, to be fair. So moving on, there are two primary perspectives when extending SaaS. If any of you guys have looked at extending SaaS, there's pretty much two ways of extending SaaS. You can either integrate with SaaS, and that is usually getting data in or out of Fusion SaaS, or consuming events, which is also getting data out. And to be honest, that's it. But this is by far the most popular perspective. Every SaaS customer is doing some level of integration with OIC or not with OIC, whatever it might be. Everybody's doing integration of one hand. On the other side, you've got extending SaaS functionality. And here we're usually talking about build in additional user interface screens, iframes, rules, maybe some extra fields. You might be creating standalone screens that interact with the SaaS services. They don't go into Fusion SaaS. These are custom UI. So for a big telco in Europe, I'm working with, they've created some screens for their customer service representatives to query customer data. They never log on to Fusion SaaS. It is a specific UI for these guys, and they've built that, and they've built that using UI technologies. It could be a mobile app. So there's customer again in Europe that I know that they've built mobile apps to do this. And we've also got some patterns that we're working on how you can extend the process within Fusion SaaS with products like BPM. So that's kind of a bit of a starting point. I think some of the main points you really think are, I mean, for me, the most important reason why OCI makes perfect sense for a SaaS customer for extensibility and integration is because it's in the same data centers and it's the same technology set that Oracle themselves are using. So what I'm now going to do, I've got like 35 minutes, and I'm now going to, maybe a bit less, going to talk about some of the patterns that we've seen and we've proved out where we can extend SaaS with OCI itself. So it's a collection of patterns. So before we go into that, security. I have big arguments about some people in my team about security. Security is just important as ever. It's more important. And I mentioned earlier on now that all the Fusion applications, all the Fusion apps instances are now automatically federated to IDCS. All our old instances, we had a initiative called, oh gosh, can't remember what it's called, but there was an initiative where we actually went around and basically provisioned IDCS to all our existing Fusion apps customers, and all new Fusion apps customers get an IDCS instance automatically installed, federated when they purchase Fusion apps. So I'm sure there might be one or two exceptions in the field still, but more and more, well, by the large, you can now assume that Fusion apps and IDCS, the identity store, is federated. So if you're building applications, if you're building APIs, you need to protect them. You can query the users. And one of the things we can do is you can protect your APIs using API Gateway, which is one of our products. The way you do this is you create an OCI app. Then you go inside IDCS and you basically create what's called an IDCS confidential application, which is and then within the confidential application, you add scopes. So if it's Fusion apps, I would you click on the plus button, add scope on here, and then you go and look for one that looks very similar to this. It'll actually say Oracle Applications Cloud Fusion, and then have the scope name there. You will add that to your OAuth application. This means that if you protect your application, your APIs using this OAuth scope or this OAuth confidential app, and within it will have a scope and use scope names, you'll be able to actually log in or go through API Gateway using a credential that's been generated by Fusion apps. So that is something we'll see later on. There are two ways. The quick and dirty way is this one here, which is quick and easy. It's not 100% correct because the scope names that you use for your clients should map the API Gateway. So the correct thing to do there is to create do it a different way and do a token exchange with Fusion. More complicated for a slide. But this approach works fine, and as long as you're okay being non-purist, it works fine. The other parts of security is that when we are building our integrations we'll have a number of integration we'll show in a few seconds, we may have to have stored our passwords, our username passwords, maybe the Fusion apps URLs, and we need to store that securely somewhere in OCI. And in OCI, we have now a new product called OCI Vault. And OCI Vault basically allows us to store secrets inside the vault in a very secure way that can only be obtained by certain users. So let's talk a few about the integration use cases. These are integration use cases that we're going to build using OCI instead of perhaps OIC. So the most simplest of use case is the SOAP to REST conversion. There are very few services now that are only SOAP only. And let's assume at the very top here, this was a client like Angular, VB, whatever it might be, it can't access that. The way you can do this from within using serverless functions is you can deploy an API gateway. That API gateway would have a dotted line down to the identity store down here using the technique that I mentioned earlier on. And that API gateway would be able to call a function the Oracle function would do the rest, the SOAP call for us. It would receive data from Fusion. It would then convert that to JSON using, say, Jackson, and then spit it back out to the client. So it's a very, it's a SOAP to REST conversion pattern that some customers may want to use, because they may only have 1 or 2 entry points that they need to use. They don't want to actually spin up an entire Oracle Integration Cloud. Now, this is like probably 10 minutes to do in OIC, and to build this in code will probably take you an hour or so. And then you've got to maintain it. So there are advantages and disadvantages. The advantage here is that it's code-based versus declarative. We did have a scenario recently where a third-party vendor, their JSON formats were invalid. They actually had a JSON format. Their payload was actually invalid, and OIC didn't like it. So we weren't able to use OIC for that use case. We were able to do exactly this pattern over here, which is REST to SOAP, where we basically, well, it was REST to REST in this case, but we're able to actually use low-level Java APIs to get the data and basically ignore the invalid JSON that was actually there. Again, customers like it because it's managed, it's serverless. The other scenario on the side here is what I call the aggregator scenario, where you call API gateway, you call a function, and this function can do multiple calls depending on the language you're using, Python, or if it's Java, use completable futures. You can basically spin up threads and basically call multiple REST calls at one time, get the data back, aggregate it, spit it out. So again, this is the classic aggregation pattern. So these are available, and you can do them. We have done them. The main issue for me is that it's code-based approach. What happens about error management? What happens when it doesn't work? You've got to manage all that. It's a code-based approach versus declarative, but it has got some advantages. And Kalpesh will talk about your use case in a few seconds. Another kind of cute example that I've seen, and this can be extended with OIC as well, is the use case here is that we need to get to our mobile device our customer data, and this customer data is huge. It's like it's a mobile app, but it's got a massive customer database that needs to be downloaded, right? We need to download. We can't get the mobile app to call Fusion and download it. It's just, you can't do that. It's just not going to work. And you've got to massage the data. So what we've done here is we have a scheduled BICC extract. This is the supported way to get data out of ERP, BICC, and then if necessary, BIP. We use BICC, and BICC natively supports Oracle Object Storage Cloud. So you can basically run a report on an hourly basis, whatever it might be, and put the data into a bucket. Incoming, I call that bucket. That fires an event. That event fires a function. That function reads the data from the incoming bucket, transforms it. So BICC gives you the data in CSV format. We don't want it in CSV. We want it in zip format, or we want it in JSON format. So the process function converts it, dumps it into the process bucket. Done. This happens every 10 minutes, every half an hour, and that's all good and dandy. The client comes along and he wants to call. He wants to get that data, so they log on and say, sync my data. Again, functions are not REST or SOAP. They are a function. You need to front end them with API gateway if you want to expose them to REST. So in here, we deploy an API gateway. The client can call API gateway. It calls a client function. And what we do is we return the data. Now, functions has a limit where we have to limit the actual payload size. So we limit it to about 6 meg. So what we've done here in this example is we find the latest piece of data, the latest data downloaded, and we reply back to the client what's called a pre-authenticated download URL that the client can then execute to actually get the data using a good old-fashioned HTTP call, which is long. And I mentioned again that API gateway would protect that data by using API gateway and IDCS using the technique I mentioned earlier on. And I'm going to, myself or a colleague of mine will be writing a blog article on how to secure endpoints. Dennis, BICC is BI Cloud Connector. It's a way of extracting data in bulk from Fusion applications. And the destination endpoints are, I think it is OCI storage is probably the main one, but I think you can also go into UCM. Hope that helps. So let's take that idea a little bit further. So this is what I recently blogged about, serverless data loading. So we want to load data into Fusion SaaS, and we don't want to use, so again, this is an example where we've gone and we said, OIC, and the customer said no for whatever reason. Or there are just reasons why we don't want to use OIC, whatever. This is more the art of the possible. So when you're doing imports or integrations into Fusion apps, there are usually 3 stages. Transform, which is this box on the side here, load the data, and then maybe see if it worked, the 3rd stage. So my scenario here, which I've got, is that if you've ever looked at Oracle ERP imports, there are these horrible CSV files that need to be compressed into a zip file. I don't like that. I like JSON. So I've created a simplified JSON, and what I do is I run that JSON into an incoming JSON bucket. That bucket fires an event that calls my transform function. My transform function reads the file, or one file because it's a JSON file, and it generates a zip file, which in this case, in my sample case, contains 2 files, 2 CSV files, grouped in a zip file, and dumps it into a zip file folder. I then go and delete the file. This is my transform function. There is also, and I don't have it on the slide, there's also an OCI transform engine as well. There's an integration engine underneath the cover as well that could do this as well. It's worth noting that. But the data is now in the proper format for ERP for loading, and I dump it into this file. And then again, that fires an event. I call a function called load to SaaS. I read the file, do what I need to do it, read the SaaS into Fusion Apps. And when I've finished, I store the file in the processing folder. And when I store it in there, I actually store it with the job ID. Fusion Apps gives you a job ID. When Fusion Apps has finished processing it, it'll actually do a callback, or one of the mechanisms you've got is callbacks for an event. That is a HTTP call. I come down, that comes there. The callback function basically goes and gets a file from processing and then moves it into either success or failed. And it decides if it's success or failed by basically introspecting the payload. Did it succeed or did it fail? And that's that. What's interesting now is that I can extend this model now, and I can say, whoa, I've got events notifications on a topic. I could publish it on topic, put it on notification topic. This can be I can then use the notification service within OCI and then either push it out to an email, or I could call another function, stick it into Prometheus and display it using Grafana. So I can, basically call another function, which in turn calls a Prometheus instance, inserts the data, and then I could use Grafana to chart that data. So the nice thing here is that the architecture is loosely coupled in a way that you can extend it in a way. The other thing that's also worth noting is that if you've ever actually done integration with Fusion App, this zip file section here, I could skip the whole transform. My file's already in a transform format, and I could dump it directly in the zip files bucket, and it would work. So this scenario is totally serverless. It's flexible, take it in and out pieces. It's portable-ish, so some customers want to have a level of portability. It is microservice style. This is very much like a microservice. Each component, each bucket's got its own processing engine. Yeah. The negatives, it is a code versus buy. This took me a little while to get all working, and you've got to think about error management and then retries, and then the dashboards for notifications popping onto Prometheus. There's a lot to do before as you go into there. So it could become a rabbit hole, but for simple integrations, it's good. So Harry or Hanny on the actual chat, they said, in this serverless data loading use case, what about if we need to do some data mapping before converting zip? Well, that would be the functionality you do in the transform. My sample just literally converts the JSON to the zip file, but you would and should and could actually do a REST call from there, and you would write that all in Java or Python, whatever it may be. This is documented on a blog post that I posted, and I actually showed the different files and the different things there. The one last thing is I've got here I'm actually loading data into Fusion Apps. You store the secrets in the vault. You don't store them in parameters. You don't store them in your source code. You store them in the vault to ensure that they are secure. Another example, so this is an example showing how PaaS and SaaS, PaaS and OCI, like the cloud native and products like Oracle Integration Cloud, how they work together. So HCM has this concept of a new hire. Somebody's joined Oracle, we fire an Atom event, our Integration Cloud picks up that Atom event, and it does stuff that we need to do. So I've got enrichment processing. This is existing. Some bright spark decided, wouldn't it be cool if we could get the photo from LinkedIn, Facebook, wherever it may be, an image store, and maybe shove the Oracle logo behind it. So what we have here is an integration where the integration happens, we call a function that gets the photo from the image store. There's my ugly face there. We then use products like OpenCV, it should be, image manipulation, it's not OpenCV here. We take the picture and we stick something on top of it, and I've just got a picture of sombrero on top of that. And then the Oracle Integration Cloud can then load it back into Fusion applications, and this can be done in the background. The beauty of this scenario here is that everything you see here outside of the image, the process inside in this other function, the bucket, you only pay for that if you use it. So you don't have to have something spun up and running to do this. Additionally, doing image manipulation is not something Integration Cloud can do. This is a use case where Integration Cloud couldn't do this. I could have spun up a Kubernetes container to do the conversion for me, but then I'd be paying for that Kubernetes container until I turn it off and turn it on. So this is a really cool example of Integration Cloud. It can't do the image manipulation. It's not really can do that. And we can basically use some serverless technologies to actually do it for us in a way that's cost effective for the customer. And also yourselves, because everything on this page is serverless. The Integration Cloud is effectively serverless. You don't manage nothing. You give it the code, it runs it, it does it. Functions, and the list goes on. Consuming ERP events. So in Fusion, you can actually register an interest in events. So I want to know when the customer account changes, or a customer changes, or an account changes, or a supplier changes. There's a whole bunch of events that we can actually subscribe to. So here is an example where we're listening for those events. Those events are HTTP events. We spun up an API gateway, which in turn talks to FN, and FN then spits that data out onto a stream on Oracle Streaming. So think Kafka for that last one there. So that is something that is being asked by one customer in the UK. There's a UK merchant that's after that, and they want to basically find out whenever things change in Fusion, they want to basically call it out in OSS. So that's streaming. And that's that. So this is an interesting use case that we're developing and seeing how it goes. Do you want to basically consume every event in Fusion? That is a question that is worth asking, but having some sort of filter, it's there. This is the art of the possible, I suppose. Before I go into extension, there's a couple of questions I wanted to say. So Pawan, share the code sample for the SOAP call approach. We're actually in the process of publishing that. So a colleague of mine, so let's go back. I shouldn't do this, should I? No, I shouldn't, should I? This SOAP to call, what we've done is we've created a generic function that you just call, and you pass in the WSDL URL and then the parameters, and it does the SOAP to call conversion for you, and it does it generically, that there's only ever one function. It's a generic adapter. So that is a piece of sample code that we are actually in flight of publishing. For scheduling, so Phil, when you said what are you using for scheduling, you're talking in BICC, I assume. That is a function of BICC itself. You can actually say, I want it run every hour. Are you calling the function direct from OIC? OIC should have the functionality to call it direct now, but you can actually, if it's not there, you can actually use API Gateway to do it. And I know a lot of people like to do that for monitoring purposes. So here, extending SaaS business logic. So in Fusion SaaS, there is a product called App Composer, and App Composer has the ability to execute rules in Groovy. In ERP, you can also call out to SOAP calls as well. So this is a scenario where basically we've got Sales Cloud and we've got an opportunity, and we want to basically see, is this opportunity or this lead likely to be fraudulent, or what is the likelihood of this opportunity going through to success? Fusion Sales Cloud couldn't do that. It's Groovy. It doesn't support machine learning or anything like that. So one example here is to go App Composer through API Gateway API gateway, again, and it's the common theme, you protect the endpoints using IDCS, which in turn is, there should be a dotted line up there to Fusion apps. And then you can basically, from the business logic, you can either run, I don't know, TensorFlow, whatever it might be from within that, or you can use the Oracle OCI Data Science platform. And at the bottom there, there's that really cool blog article showing how you can actually deploy a machine learning model and use and do some classification from functions. So this shows how you can expose a classification model or a machine learning model to functions, which in turn can be exposed to App Composer or ERP in that case there. Could you have used, I've used functions here. Again, I'm heavily leaning towards the serverless. You could have used Kubernetes, you could use your VM, but again, I still think that SaaS customers really do like the idea of managed. Other use cases we've seen are scorecards. We've seen, one of my colleagues, Tim, he mentioned one where you, there's some business logic you can't actually do within Fusion, or can't do efficiently within Fusion. Maybe it's calling lots of pieces of data from different places. So yeah, this is it. Let's have a look. Is App Composer support in all modules of SaaS or specific? So App Composer is supported in a number of modules, not all of them. It's supported in CRM, some projects supports it. I think the parts of supply chain have some App Composer. For the majority, when I say App Composer, I mean CRM. CRM has Sales Cloud, or Engagement Cloud as it's called, has the most, the richest implementation of App Composer. ERP actually also enables you to do call outs. So you could actually do this from ERP as well. Maybe I'll update the slide to include ERP to the top there. So now we're going to go to the next one. So again, the patterns are starting to be the same pattern time and time again. So here, in the old days, we had a product called JCSX, which allowed you to deploy code, run an ADF app, or whatever it may be, and Oracle managed the Java cloud environment. And we had a database. JCSX is deprecated, and these customers wanted a JCSX equivalent. How can I deploy my business logic, if I've got any of that is, in a way. So for this scenario, we actually built a proof of concept that was published last year and already used by a couple of customers, where we basically use VB Studio for the UI, and again, API gateway exposing the business logic to Fusion apps. This is the same pattern I showed you on one of the earlier slides. It's just at the endpoint, rather than being a REST client of some sort, in this case, it's VB Studio, and we're talking, and we have the same mapping to IDCS there. The only difference here is that when I'm executing my logic in the business logic here, I need to know what roles the users are. And for that, I do need to go back to IDCS and talk to IDCS. At the bottom there, you've got some a GitHub link with sample code, and you've got a docs.oracle.com solutions where we go through this scenario for you to peruse. Let's assume you need more than serverless. So serverless, Angela, he's really in serverless. There is a time and a place as well for partially managed components. For example, again, VB, we had a customer that wanted 6,000 concurrent users hitting Fusion ERP. That's a lot of users because it's B2C. The use case was B2C. They wanted to protect ERP from the end user workloads. They don't want, I don't know, my mate Phil, who might be on this call, to go and do a smash, like hit this website really hard. So what this customer wanted was something that was elastic. Serverless sounds good for that. But they wanted it to be completely agile, and they wanted to do clever things like A/B testing, canary builds, canary deployment, etc. So for these guys, we kind of prototyped and built out this scenario. And the scenario here is we've got ERP at the bottom. We basically have VB at the top. VB could call ERP directly through this right-hand branch. There are times that we might want to go through Helidon. So we deployed a Helidon layer there, it's Java. And we go through Integration Cloud because we want to do some transform within Integration Cloud. We're reusing a transform in this scenario it was. And to take the load off Fusion ERP, what we do is we use ERP and BICC on a scheduled time, and we put data into an ATP database. So we cache in product line items, the names, the descriptions, stuff that doesn't change that often. so that when the actual client is calling the Helidon layer is kind of looking at data either in the ATP database for lookups, or it's calling the ERP directly using Integration Cloud. So there was a mixture of all three of these going there for this particular client. The real advantage here again is it's totally elastic. It's huge. Performance is it's unrivaled. You have complete control. You can do a service mesh. We were looking to implement Istio here, but we didn't in the end. And you can do all of that funky stuff. The challenge is, however, it is totally customer managed. Well, not 100% true. ATP isn't, Integration Cloud isn't, Kubernetes itself, the control planes are not. Oracle manages those. But there's a lot of other stuff that you need to manage. So, and that gives you a huge amount of control and a huge amount of management to go with it as well. So it was there. It gave the, you can do everything. But it was an example and a use case that we could actually reference. So we come to the very end of the slide deck. So the sum of this is the cloud platform that we've got. I've shown you a few of the examples. I focused on the non-OCI ones because you guys see enough OIC one, sorry. Focused on the non-OIC one because you guys have had a lot of that already. But it's worth noting that OIC is your go-to market, the first one, but when OIC isn't quite right for this particular customer, they don't want a declarative environment, they want code, you want code, right? Then we can choose the platform that we offer at Oracle, gives us cloud native and serverless options that we can use, and there is a whole collection there. Strategically, you use the right tool for the right job, and mix and match. I showed an example of Oracle Integration Cloud calling Oracle functions because it wasn't actually something that Oracle Integration Cloud could do out of the box. And with those new services, we now have a new level of agility. So it is actually something quite exciting to see what we can do and basically push the boundaries.
Yeah, Angelo, thanks for the excellent presentation and the very interesting patterns, how to extend and integrate SaaS serverless and make use of Oracle Integration Cloud. So to wrap up the presentations before we come to the Q&A, if you're not yet a member in the partner community, make sure you register to get the invite for our upcoming hands-on trainings and community webcasts. We are happy to support you at our Slack channel if you have further technical questions. And if you want to try Oracle Integration Cloud, make use of the playground. For more information, visit the Oracle Integration website. We also offer free trials of the Oracle Cloud Platform. If you would like to try serverless functions and Helidon, please visit cloud.oracle.com/try-it. So we have a couple of questions. And of course, Jose Corian would like to know where he can find the slides and the replay of the webinar. So Jose, like always, you can find it in the next newsletter. Therefore, it's important that you register for the community newsletter, and the slides are already published at the community workspace. You can also download the slides from any replay links as it's part of the service.
Superb, yes, that's right. So let me quickly go through the questions that I've got on the actual Slack. So Hani, is VB Studio part of PaaS or OIC? It's well, it's the same. It's Integration Cloud. I believe that's the correct answer. Is that right, Jürgen?
Yes.
Correct. Right. So we'll mark that. Mohammed, how can we use VB to fulfill our reporting needs? VB or VBS or VB is not a reporting tool. It's a UI tool. You can execute queries against Fusion SaaS through the REST APIs and get your data out of it, but VB is not a reporting tool. If you want to do reporting, Fusion SaaS has two tools inside there. One is called BI Publisher and one is called OTBI, and you can embed reports that are generated from BI Pub and OTBI inside VB as an iframe, for example. And I think my colleague Tim's actually created a sample that basically executes a report and then returns back a PDF. So you can do it, but keep in mind that VBCS is not a reporting tool. It's a UI tool. It's for building user interfaces declaratively. Which is the best approach to extend SaaS for complex logic, OIC and VBCS or serverless? It depends on your use case and your need. If you've already got OIC, then you should, OIC makes perfect sense. However, and I need to check, I'm not sure if identity propagation is available within OIC yet. So OIC, the adapters store the identity in there, and it's done by an integration ID. If you need to execute the queries against Fusion SaaS as that user, then I believe today OIC can't actually do that for us, although I do know that that is something they're working on. So when we have that functionality, it will become a bit of a case of, do you want declarative or do you want code style? Again, these are both options. It's the art of the possible. Jürgen will provide the URL to the PowerPoint. Hani, I have a same use case where I SOAP consume from OIC and call out from VB. Right, so we need, but the issue is that Ricardo, OIC can't see VBCS endpoints. What's the security? Ping me, angelo.santagata@oracle.com, and I'll look at that. It depends on the problem there, Hani. I've mentioned what BICC is. I mentioned the SOAP call. So my colleague Christian Weeks is going to be publishing that probably early in the new year. We have to go through a legal process to make sure that, you know, legal and secure coding standards and stuff. Phil, for scheduling, I mentioned it, so that I think it was referring to the BI publisher, the BI slide, the BICC slide, sorry, and BICC has its own scheduler that we can use there. When extending SaaS that impacts you, how do you avoid the possible first cycle latency overhead that can exist with functions? Now, the way I get around this one here is I group my functions. So a UI, let's say a UI. So the problem that Phil's got is functions today in Oracle, they have a couple of seconds of a cold start time, can be up to 10 seconds. Number one, it's being worked on. So I'm actually part of a team that's actually working on that. Well, I'm part of the critical people that's saying we have to fix that. It is being worked on. Number two, the way you get around it is twofold. Number one, group functions together into a single function. So you call a single function with it, and what you can do within that function, you can introspect the URL, and if it's slash opportunity, well, put all the opportunity stuff inside there. If it's a get, put a post, you have them all inside the single function. It breaks the purist view of a function does one thing and one thing only, but it is a valuable way of basically ensuring that once you've called it once, it's already hot for the other functions. So my sample that I've got in OTBI on GitHub does exactly that. I list my opportunities using a get, a get many, sorry, get slash, no, it's a get, sorry, it's a get many. And then when I drill into a single opportunity, I'm doing a get slash opportunity number. That is the same code. It's already hot. It's already there. I just have to use it. And then when I want to update or delete the opportunity, then basically, again, they're inside there. So to do that, I had to implement a very, very simple router inside my function. And that's what I would recommend for that. It's a standard practice. I believe it's called the service pattern. Although some functions purists don't like it. BICC is Cloud Connector. Thank you, Sunil. Is there any technical difference between OIC for SaaS and OIC Enterprise Edition? I don't know. Mohammed, what would the reporting tool be? It's BICC. It's BI Publisher or BICC, OTBI or BI Publisher. How to look where corresponding tables are in SaaS? I don't know where to look. You shouldn't be looking at tables in SaaS. If you're using BI Publisher, do not use SQL. It is there, it's available, but do not use SQL. We are highly discourage people actually querying the actual SaaS database tables directly. It is documented in some of the ERP pages for some of the actual tables. Shut the door. However, I highly discourage it. The best place to look at is to use the REST APIs. Not 100% sure. Oh, so that was Dennis. That was your extensor. Yeah, we'll have. Yeah. So you have a use case where Mohammed, where VB will play with millions of records. Will it be good at the UI? Absolutely. I just wouldn't recommend downloading million records into the client. One of the big differences of VB, say, versus our old ADF product is it all runs in the browser. VB runs 90% of it in the browser. The server, there's a proxy, a security engine, yada, yada, yada. I would say you want to query 10, 20 records at a time, paginated. And the Oracle SaaS REST APIs, if you go direct, they support pagination. And if you build your own REST API, you should build pagination for exactly that reason. we did do a test in this, you can store about 4,000 rows of data in VB before it starts to get upset. It's actually Chrome that got upset and then VB. Oh, it's a hat for sale. No, it's not. It's my son's hat. I stole it. Did the tables come from EBS v12? Yes, a lot of the tables came from EBS in Fusion for ERP especially. So if you know ERP and you know EBS, if you know EBS, you'll understand the tables. But again, don't look at the database tables. One day we might, I won't be surprised if we blocked access to it. So don't go there. Do you have documents for SaaS extensions and use cases? Well, we've got this PowerPoint. You've got my name and stuff. And we are regularly on A-Team SaaS, myself and a colleague of mine, Ashish, a little team of ours, myself, Ashish Singh, Christian Weeks, Derek Kam, Mani Krishnan, and Arvind Srinivas Murphy. We're actually going to be regularly posting stuff on our A-Team Chronicles blog on different use cases. So I've done the first one, which is the data loading one. Ashish is going to get the events one out there soon, and Christian just posted the SOAP one, I believe. So we are doing a lot of that. And also we're working with our documentation team, docs.oracle.com/solutions, and they would be doing that. Can you do asynchronous calls to functions? No, you can't. The trick there, if you need to do asynchronous calls to functions, the trick that I've seen used, well, hang on a second. No, you can call a function, and that function can do asynchronous calls out, and you just have to wait for the responses and stuff. You can implement that. But if you mean, can you call a function asynchronously and then get it to do something in the background, the best way to do that I've seen is to put them to call function, put what you want to do on a notification topic, say, I want this to happen, and hang another function on the end of that topic to do the processing, because then it runs totally asynchronously. You call it, the message is sent on a queue, the response comes back immediately, that's asynchronous, and the processing happens in the background. It depends on your use case, Sam, that you want to do. What does it mean, SaaS? SaaS, software as a service. So products, anything that you run as a service that you just don't do anything with, you just basically use it. Typically, it's measured by a business unit. So HCM is measured by your employees in your company. CRM is opportunities, contracts, whatever it may be. Suppliers, ERP might be suppliers, and Commerce Cloud might be sites, etc. And the list goes on. That's my definition of SaaS. Oh, coming up to time. Pawan says the approach is more effective than OIC, scales better. Sample code, yep, that's going to be shared. Just looking, there was some that was sent out onto the different chat.
Angelo, thank you very much for your impressive presentation. If you have questions, your Oracle Partner Manager is here to support you. If you don't know who that is, please feel free to contact the OPN team. Angelo, we have your email address, and there's a LinkedIn profile, and you write an excellent blog. So please visit blogs.oracle.com and look for Angelo. I also would like to say thanks to Phil Wilkins. Phil, are you with us?
I'm here.
Ah, my mate's here, Phil. I plugged you earlier on.
So thanks for all the meetups we run with you as part of the Oracle Developer Meetup Group in London. And we now host the meetups virtually. So thank you for being the host of that meetup group. And thanks for your great contribution to the Oracle community with all your books and blog articles.
My pleasure, thank you.
You want to promote the meetup group and how to get there?
Yeah, so if you Google London Oracle Developer Meetup, you'll find us. It'll be the first result. It's because I'm Googling it all the time. I can never remember the URL. And it makes sure we're on the top of the search.
Cool. And what book are you publishing next?
So I'm working on a book about Fluent D through Manning. Fluent D is actually the underpinning to Oracle log monitoring as a technology. So when you see, if you look at that cloud native solution on OCI, you'll actually notice that some of the interfaces are exactly those that I've described in the book.
Excellent, thanks. So for everybody, if you write a blog about Oracle technology and our cloud services, make sure you let us know. We're happy to promote it in our monthly newsletters. Angelo, thanks for the excellent presentation.
Pleasure.
And everybody, thank you for attending. It was an amazing 2020 year. Keep safe, Merry Christmas, and hope to welcome you in January for our next community webcast. Thank you very much.